The problem with today is, as a marketer, it used to be you could come up with a really cool idea, a really cool cold email, a really cool gifting strategy, event strategy, and that would last you a year, 2 years, 5 years even. It took 10 years to really see the demise of cold email as a channel. But now with how quick information spreads, with how competitive so many areas of like software are, people will take those ideas and they'll use them themselves. And once you start getting 100 things at your office letters, you stop reading any of them.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to AI in Motion, the only show that focuses on how businesses are practically using AI and some of the tools and products that you can use and start employing in your own business. More than anything, how you think about AI and deploying it inside of your company. And my guest today is Neil Tewari. He is the co-founder of Conversion AI. And we're going to talk about a lot of different stuff today. We're going to talk a little bit about SEO. We're going to talk a little bit about cold email and how he's deploying that inside of his company to help other businesses leverage AI and improve the entire process. So without further ado, Neil, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Yeah. I found out in our little pre-call that my research on you might be a bit flawed, but tell me if I got this first part right. You're a young guy, and it looks like you dropped out of school in 2020 and started a company that was selling non-intrusive ads in the gaming industry. Is that right?
That's right, man. I mean, I would like to think still young for sure. Feels like there's a new class of like young, barely going to college founders that are emerging now. So I'm kind of, I think, one generation above, or maybe not a full generation, but a half a generation above that. The new class of super young founders. But yes, I did drop out of UC Berkeley in 2020, originally to do like you have in your notes, non-intrusive ads. We spent a couple of years pivoting around. Eventually ended on what Conversion does today, though.
Well, I thought it was pretty cool because it's revolutionary in the sense that you were in the meta space and the metaverse, and you were trying to figure out how do we bring advertising into that in a way that, and in the gaming industry where it's just sort of there, like on T-shirts, on the sides of cars and things like that. And that was a concept to me that I had seen when my kids played video games, but that I hadn't really thought through that much. And that was that's pretty cool, man. And then you got out of that and you decided to come over and start working really in SEO and helping that process with AI. And originally I wanted to talk to you a lot about that, and I think we'll just touch on it here. But I want to ask you, just because you spent so much time in the space, where do you think SEO is going to go as it relates to artificial intelligence? I know that, like ChatGPT, and they're looking at adding ads into their free version, and that there may be a way to have SEO in that capacity. But it seems like there's a really big shift, especially for reporters, news stuff. So if you're a company today who's looking at SEO and trying to figure out, is this a good investment or not, what do you tell that company?
Yeah, great question. And you're hitting the hammer on the nail here. We had two large pivots in our company history. We originally doing like non-intrusive ads. We actually know so much about like the gaming and like programmatic like ad space. It's more than I need to know in terms of what we're building today. But yeah, a couple years ago, really found some good product market fit in terms of like AI SEO. We were one of like the first in the game, like programmatizing a lot of stuff in the SEO space. And we actually ended up making like one even larger pivot after that, or maybe not as much of a pivot, but a big expansion afterwards. But hitting your core question on AI SEO, one big thing that we're like huge believers here in Conversion is as we keep progressing in terms of like there's more saturation and more marketing tools, sales tools, any tool that you can imagine that helps out with SEO. We're very big believers in the concept of GTM Alpha, which is you can try to do something creative today that maybe a lot of other companies aren't doing, but the rate at which other companies find what you're doing, if it's creating any sort of alpha, any sort of like brief edge, other companies will immediately copy that. And so you're going to be able to do something really, really cool, but you have very limited time to actually do anything cool. So in the case of SEO, there was a period of time, specifically when actually we were probably building in that space for about a year, where everyone was writing human content, and all of a sudden a couple folks had some really significant edge. Because you take a pretty good human on SEO, now they can put out 100x the content, they can rank for 100x the number of keywords, and now you're able to like go ahead and just like really reel in a lot of content. And we saw that for so many of our customers at the time. But now as the world is progressing towards now, everybody's doing that. Now everyone's kind of back to square one in terms of everyone is pumping out infinite amount of content. All the content's pretty good. A lot of it is AI generated slop, but if you have someone good at the top managing it. So now we're kind of circling back to like the original concept of the best, highest quality content is primarily still human written and very, very human touched up. And that's now kind of winning back in the game. So when folks come to us and they're like, hey, SEO is going to be like a really core piece of their strategy, I tell them like, hey, it's very cyclical. It's like, how can you keep creating edges month over month over month over month, rather than is there some like little hack that I could use that pumps out 100x amount of content?
No, I think that that's such a valuable insight for the audience to understand, is that it's always been somewhat cyclical. If you go back, I've been a copywriter for 15 years, and you can go back and look at ads from the 20s that you could pretty much copy and would still run and would still produce today. But it's cyclical. They go from story ads to sort of like high impact ads to other sort of different designs and layouts. But it all kind of goes around, and you've got to have a very diversified sort of marketing strategy if you're going to be successful. But to your point about garbage content and this flood of new media that's hitting everything, and I just had a conversation with somebody else who we were talking about what happens when we go from 30 to 40 million Instagram posts a month or reels a month to 30 to 40 million a day. How does that affect organic reach and organic content? You're in the email space now, cold email, and that sort of area. And I want you to talk specifically about how you guys are kind of avoiding the trap of, oh, now we're just another group that our stuff just looks like AI stuff being pumped out to companies across the United States at scale.
Really fantastic question. Because we spent a lot of time in the SEO space, we had that issue before where we created a system where the product was primarily around, hey, if I use, at the time we were called Style AI, we renamed to Conversion. At the time is if I use Style AI, I could have this momentary, like significant bump in traffic, high quality traffic, and see this boost. But the problem as we continued to achieve a lot of saturation for businesses like competitive in the same market was someone else using Style AI actually harmed the competitive businesses around there that use Style AI, because now everyone has the exact same edge. It's one of the big reasons that we ended up expanding to more of a full-on marketing automation platform. Not as much cold email, but more marketing, nurture emails, or automations, etc. And so I think if you buy into this concept of GTM Alpha is temporary, and actually the time at which you can create alpha continues to, and that's one of the most frustrating things in the market.
Hang on. So before, just so everybody understands, what is GTM Alpha? Because I know if you're not in the tech world, they're not going to know what that means.
Yes, excuse me for jumping ahead here. So GTM Alpha is this concept. It was like popularized term from Clay, published a blog on this a couple months ago. And it's this concept of the really like probably the largest frustration as a marketer, which is you think of something really cool, a really niche way to go out and bring in a ton of customers, and you start doing it. And for that momentary period of time, you're able to generate a lot of leads. One example is there was great example of Ramp would go out and like drop letters instead of like emailing and LinkedIn messaging their ICP. They would go and actually physically drop off like handwritten notes and letters to people's like offices. And people were like amazed, like, oh great, like I see all my emails, I skim through them. How many people still deliver like actual raw in-person to me mail? And people would read it and they would end up booking time, etc. GTM Alpha is created by doing things like that. The problem with today is as a marketer, it used to be you could come up with a really cool idea, a really cool cold email, a really cool gifting strategy, event strategy, and that would last you a year, 2 years, 5 years even. It took 10 years to really see the demise of cold email as a channel. But now with how quick information spreads, with how competitive so many areas of like software are, people will take those ideas and they'll use them themselves. And once you start getting 100 things at your office letters, you stop reading any of them. And so GTM Alpha is this concept of every single like week or month or quarter, I need to come up with like 2, 3, 4 new ideas in order to continue generating leads. Otherwise, whatever I'm doing will become saturated. And we see this in Google ads, we see this in SEO, we see this in LinkedIn ads, we see it with pretty much every single channel. So marketers have to spend now way more of their time like sitting and just coming with super creative ideas. And so, go ahead.
No, I wanted you to finish. I have a couple of questions, but go ahead and finish your thought.
Yeah, so my thought is here at Conversion, one of our theses on on what will end up working in marketing and sales tech specifically are the businesses that are built around creating GTM Alpha, as in you use the platform, you can keep using the platform to create alpha, rather than a platform, which is what we pivoted away from, which only can create alpha for some momentary period of time. So we're very bearish on products that are like, hey, we'll really help you do this one cool thing inside of an email. Because we're like, great, that might help us today, but in a month might be completely useless to us. Is it worth onboarding to a whole new tool for that? And when we look at some awesome, we're a very big Clay company here internally. When we look at a tool like Clay, we're like, oh, this one notebook in Clay can be great. But next month, I'll have to come up with a new idea. But great, Clay is there to also help enable that next idea. And that's how we view like tools that are very helpful to us today.
So when you're talking about GTM Alpha, you're not really just talking about changing distribution channels every 6 months when one sort of wears out. Like we're not going to do cold email this month, and then we're going to do Google Ads the next month, and then we're going to do direct mail the next month. You're really talking about varying the strategy or the angle inside of each one of those distribution channels. And do you suggest people focus on one or many, or is that determined by the company's size and budget?
Absolutely. It's both of them. I think that it could be changing channels, as in a channel just stops performing, and it could be improving within a given channel. The most obvious one that we're seeing like so much about like all over LinkedIn is like cold email doesn't return, cold email doesn't, and then every now and then someone posts, oh, cold email for us still returns. And so overall as a channel, that's one that's been particularly dampened because it's so easy to just send out like a gazillion emails today, compared to even just 3, 4, 5 years ago. But yet some folks take that and say, hey, we're going to keep iterating on our cold emails. We're going to write the best cold emails on the market. And sometimes that works and creates some more alpha within the channel. And then sometimes you just have to say, look, cold email no longer returns. We're going to have to take our creativity and bring it to cold LinkedIn, bring it to cold calling, etc. In general, there's a push towards very human channels like cold calling or events and conferences, stuff that's very difficult to do at a spray and pray AI clip. But yeah, we are internally iterating within channels and among different channels as well.
How are you employing AI in that capacity? Because one of the things you said a couple of months ago, you wrote on a LinkedIn post, you said AI agents don't work for marketing yet. And when I read that, my first thought was, well, marketing's a pretty broad term. So what do you mean by that? Why do you think that is it the fact that the agents just aren't built well enough, or is there not an understanding it? Are they not smart enough, or is it just that nobody's built a good enough one yet?
Great question. I actually am a decent believer that AI agents don't work in any facet of a company, but maybe I should first define what I believe is an agent versus just like a tool. I consider like an agent what I do with someone who works here, which is say, hey, this is something I want to accomplish, like doing X on a certain channel, like go out and accomplish X for me. And there are some products that aim to do things like that. We have like some customer support products internally that just respond to support tickets, for example. For marketing, it was like, it's been something over the last couple of years has been hypothesized that we're going to be able to see something that, oh, this is the website. I can create the SEO content. I can post the content and I can iterate myself in determining like what content I should write. And the reason I think that like agents as a whole, specifically in marketing, but across the full stack are not fully there yet is because each one of those segments are really competitive. And so if you have company A that's using agents and company B is using a very, very smart human being, it is still unlikely that this agent can outperform that human being. And given that each channel is so saturated and so competitive, as we've been talking about, it's very difficult to create alpha in the absence of a very creative human being still being very, very present. And so when we attack with tools, we're using tools that help us create more creativity, create more alpha, but very rarely do we use a tool where we expect to do anything end to end.
Well, you guys are still running a pretty lean team, though, right? I mean, you guys are getting a lot of capacity out of a very small group of people. How are you guys doing that, especially with the rate of iteration that has to happen now in order to overcome the noise that's in the market?
Yes, that is something we do very much pride ourselves on. We are only like 14 people approaching, 8 figures in total revenue over the last couple of years. So we're stoked about that for sure. There's a component of the median age of the people on the team here is like 23, 24. So we do have one of that kind of SF 6 days a week hustle culture. For sure. Is definitely a big component of it. But it's very true. Like we still are very big believers on automate everything that can be automated. There's 2 really facets behind that. One is team of 14, almost everyone here has some sort of an engineering background. So even the little things that anything that's repetitive, we try and continue to automate and free up as high a percentage of brain power of people on the team's time for thinking. Because I think that's really where general theme of our chat today is where that alpha generates from, is the thinking, the creativity, et cetera. And the second is, yes, we're a very AI focused team. Anything immediately we think that can be automated via an AI notebook, a GPT query, whatever it is, we're very much encouraged to go ahead and go ahead and do so. And we're a part of like that lean AI leaderboard. I think Henry Shi is running as well. And I think those are two facets that are very similar across like all of those companies, is automate the repetitive task, free up the work for creativity.
Well, I want you, if you have it available, I'd love for you to show us an example of how you're kind of dissecting that and what pieces are actually getting automated and what pieces are still human made. But another question came up to me while you were talking is, in Silicon Valley today, and I use that term just loosely to define, companies in the software industry that are raising capital. Are you seeing a real shift away from sort of like growth at all costs, and we're gonna staff up and we're gonna steal market share and we'll figure out a way to make money down the road, to one of more of like a lean startup, kind of like you guys? And is that where investors are really looking for to put their funds at this time?
It's a great question. It's so funny because even though I've only been building in Silicon Valley for 3-4 years, I feel like I've seen a couple like pretty major like cycles, because that was pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID for myself. So, and like pre-COVID and COVID, it was absolutely, it's like everybody should be growing at all cost. If you're not growing like crazy, what are you doing? Why would you not spend whatever money you have in the bank divided by 24 in net burn today? Like, I can't even imagine a good reason to keep the money. And then it was like say whatever you have, whatever it is. Being a founder is really, really horrible, really, really tough. And it was kind of funny, like how quickly that changed. And now we're somewhere in between. We're like, oh, if you're well capitalized, like grow strategically, grow smartly, etc. If the question is like for any founders that are potentially listening or whatever it is, I think everything is super, super situational. We're like in a very fortunate position where we're very, very well capitalized and we're dramatically underspending. But there's some strategic reasons for that. And I think that for us is like when we find an area where we see like we can delve in really well, build an amazing product, and like really attack, we go in and we go all in and we spend everything there is there. We're very much a team where if there's a system, 50% chance of it going to zero, 50% chance of it 3xing, we'll put a lot of money into that system, for example, high EV decision making. So I think it's very situational. I'm glad that there's a little bit more of a balanced attack right now. At least I'm sure it'll go back and forth soon.
Yeah, no, the pendulum always swings. That's the one constant, is nothing stays the same. But yeah, so can you show us an example of kind of where AI is taking over and handling stuff for you? Because what I've been noticing while you're pulling this up and sharing your screen is that most of the companies that I talk to have the same general view of AI as you do, which is it's augmenting, it's not replacing. That it is helping facilitate. It's not. There's always a human, usually at the front end and at the back end, and the AI is taking care of the drudgery in the middle. Is that kind of what you guys are doing as well?
Yeah, this debate on does AI replace people, et cetera, is like a very interesting one, because the answer like flat out is no, as in you don't take a team of 30 and they just start implementing AI everywhere, and that team is like, oh, let's just fire half the people we have. That doesn't happen. But what is like the silent AI replacing people situation that is taking over is one person can now carry their certain department to way further out than before they needed to hire certain people. So what I mean, let's take like a customer support rep at like an enterprise company. Let's say you're the very first support hire and you start using a Decagon or a Pylon. And as a result, like when you previously needed to hire your first 2 reps, you actually can postpone that for like a year or 2. And so as a result, the company is now growing. Your ARR per employee is much higher. The extra money is being put into product, and the extra money is being put into marketing, making those channels even more, competitive than they were before. And so I do believe that the concept of AI is replacing people is taking form, because companies are becoming smaller. But it's not like, oh, I use this AI tool and therefore I can let go of person X. That doesn't happen yet.
Yeah, but certainly we can envision a world in the relatively near future when that would be the case, or when hiring slows because we're getting more productive capacity out of the the people that we've got working with us.
I think that's coming. Perhaps I'm a very bullish techno optimist, but where I see that heading is companies are smaller, therefore there's more companies, hopefully. And if there's more companies, then there's more people building more products that more people need, and hopefully that increases rate of innovation, increases the rate at which bad problems are being solved, and therefore the world is progressing in a positive light. So maybe it's a very techno optimist take, but that's certainly what we believe here.
No, no, I think that's a fair assessment of one potential outcome, and I don't know. I can envision. I'll hit you with an idea, a theory that's been floated around out there a little later in the show. So, but before we get to that, I do really want to see what you guys have got.
Let's take a look. Here it is. There. I mean, this is actually a very simple example. We're a very big clay company here. So we're always iterating whatever kind of our new idea is that we want to do from a sales perspective. We're always throwing it into clay. This is a perfect example. We were a co-host at an event, and we wanted to know who the right people there were to send nurture emails to, because we were co-hosting the event, but we weren't the direct hosts. So we weren't like really in charge of bringing in folks, et cetera. And we are nurturing. A big part of what we do is send nurture emails. But we wanted to make sure that we knew who was ICP, et cetera. So we built in like a direct connection from Luma into Clay here, which is pretty cool that you can just directly do that. So we download everyone who's coming in here. This will automatically update via some cron jobs. So this is always updating anyone new is coming to the event here. And for us, our ICP is that they're B2B, and that their employee count is over 10, let's say. And so right here live, what we can do is, one, if I'm like a sales rep from this company that's not going to this business, I can go ahead and I can filter very easily on where these folks are coming from here. I'm gonna do it quickly. Filter on, just make sure it's greater than 10 and that the company is B2B. And what then I can do is then I could go ahead and I can automatically upload this list everywhere I go. Obviously, when I go to the event, I want to make sure that I am, there it is. So now these are all the people that we're going out and attacking. In this case, it's only a couple. Mm-hmm. And all these people automatically updated into conversion. We're sending them nurture emails, for example. It's just a very trivially simple example of what we'll do, like just for events. We'll do the same.
Are you automating the email as well, or is a human actually in there writing that email and sending it out?
It's a great question. So we'll go ahead and upload this into conversion, which is a big part of what we do, platform. But what we'll have here is, and this is an example of like someone using us as a design partner, we'll go in here and we'll see this email will automatically update based on other variables on the business that we find. So for example, this person is going to start getting nurture emails, but based on if they are a seller, a sales leader, RevOps leader, etc., this email is actually going to automatically update. And so now, instead of the previous situation was someone's going to manually go through this Luma list, click into the LinkedIn's, find the right people, then copy paste that list into maybe a HubSpot CRM or a Salesforce CRM, sync that with your map, and then you're just going to send everyone the exact same email. But now what we're doing here is this is actually manually changing based on, or excuse me, automatically changing based on all of the characteristics of the people coming to the event, all in live time. And now back to your previous thing, we've replaced the need for a human to just go and do that like the whole time. I only have to think about how creative do I want this email to get.
So what you're saying is, if I understand correctly, is that once that data is pulled over, that the email automatically adjusts to be more relevant to, say, I don't know, a head of marketing versus a VP? Is that what you're saying?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Thanks, man.
I was just listening to something or watching somebody talk on a podcast about how you could technically now today, because the cost to code a site is so small, you could create micro sites that were specifically tailored to exactly the person or the company and the problems that they have, and then drive them directly to that microsite rather than to a website that has like more general information. Is that where we're going with this? Is that kind of the next step?
It certainly is, man. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do in conversion today, and that is one thing we're working on, custom landing pages for every single user that end goes. There's actually some cool ways you can already do this with Clay if your website's on Webflow. And I think that like that's probably where things are heading. For a while, people were using these tools and creating some alpha via emails that said like, oh, Jason, like I saw you went to Cal as well. Like, did you go to the Campanile like for New Year's or whatever it was? And that personalization was like cool for a little bit. Everyone started doing it, became not cool. But what doesn't change is trying to just very explicitly say, what is the value add I can bring you based on something I've seen, based on what your title is, based on ways you've behaved inside our product, etc. And I think that's where things are heading, where it's like, let's stop going to websites and be like, I still don't really understand what this business does.
Yeah.
But instead it says, this is actually exactly our use case for you now that we have all of these signals that we can base that off of.
I mean, is there a way for a small company, I don't know, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million a year to step in and start doing some of this internally, or do they have to go outside to somebody like you guys at Conversion, or is there something simple? Maybe let me ask the question a different way. If you're a small team of say 5 to 10 employees, and you're running lean and you're just a small company, where do you think they should start looking at AI workflows first? What should they be thinking about? Where should they be trying to automate first?
Great question. I think that usually thing one that a company is trying to figure out is how do I get my first customers? 1 through 10, 1 through 20, 1 through 30. They usually attack their personal network at first and try and find a couple customers that way. And hopefully that works out really well. I'm a very big proponent of afterwards you go cold. If you're solving a really big pain point, I still think there's ways to draw the right attention from the right buyers via your very traditional cold channels, cold email, cold LinkedIn, cold call. Doesn't work for everybody. I think in the marketing and sales industry specifically, there's still people listening. There's still a lot of pain in those areas. And so people still are responsive there. And so there's a lot of tools that can help in coming up with how do I find the perfect signals and actually go out and attack on the cold end. There's Clay, there's Unify, Nooks we're a very big proponent and customer of as well on the cold calling side of things. I think that's area one to go out and attack. Most businesses after that then transition to, okay, how do people actually get to know who I am? How do I get my branding out there, et cetera? That's where a tool like Conversion really comes in, where we take care of nurture emails, workflows, ads, all of that side of things, product data, et cetera. And I think that's usually the stack that we see the fastest growing small companies, those lean AI companies that we talk about. Mm-hmm. That's the typical stack we see them having.
Got it. Okay, I want to shift gears for a minute because I got a theory I want to run by you. This is going to sound a little weird at first, but it'll make sense. So there's a theory, I don't know if you have heard it before, that somewhere around 2000, we went into that there was a glitch in the matrix and that we just keep cycling through sort of the same life and the same time over and over again. And some of the evidence they use for this is look at the difference in music, in the way people dressed from the 60s to the 70s, right? Massive change. Then you look at 70s to the 80s when we went from bell bottoms to neon green shorts, right? Huge change. Then we go from the 80s to the 90s, again, big changes. Sometime around 2000, things just sort of stopped. Music remained relatively the same. Clothing and styles, hairstyles, largely the same. And they use this as evidence that we're in some sort of time warp. Now, I just find it interesting that this is closely aligned with the advent of the internet. The rate of repetition, the rate that we can test and iterate on marketing and our brand. And also, we've become a lot better at knowing what works and what doesn't when it comes to the psychology of marketing. Okay? Now, here's the question. Is there a risk as AI continues to speed up the rate of iteration and we grow to have an even deeper understanding of what people respond to and what they don't, that we're just going to see this will lead to some sort of sameness across all marketing and branding channels, and you're going to end up just everything's going to be derivative and template-y, and it's just going to be kind of like it is now, just sort of vanilla. Is that something that you guys are looking at, or do you guys have processes or ways that you're thinking about keeping it fresh so that we don't run into this sort of just world where nothing changes and everybody's just bouncing from one thing to another as we iterate, hundreds or thousands of times a day?
Yeah. Okay. So just to make sure I got the theory down exactly, basically the theory is stating that like human nature is very repetitive, and now that the rate of repetition is the rate of like knowledge transfer is so fast these cycles are getting shorter and shorter. And that to the limit means that the cycle is zero. And therefore, like kind of nothing is really changing. And in the specific field of marketing, you're asking if this will lead to just everyone doing all of the same things. Everything sounds the same. It's very difficult to acquire new businesses. And as a result, innovation actually almost slows down. And that's kind of
Yes,
the question.
that's exactly the concept.
Yeah. These type of like forward-looking hypotheses have been some. Maybe I need to date myself also. I'm a 2001 born kid, so I didn't get a chance to maybe see the longer sales cycles before 2000 apparently. But uh, I think that these type of claims on, hey, we're going through some sort of X revolution, and it's going to lead to like some drastic change in human nature. They've been made a few times. Like Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of like philosophers that thought that human beings in like 100 years are only going to work like 10 hours a week because there's like so much like rate. Like we're able to invent like things that could remove pins from cotton and wheels really quickly. So now everyone can travel, etc. And what it actually did was just enabled like new fields of work and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like I'm getting hit all the time by like my dad and his friends, like, well, engineers have nothing to do soon because like no one's going to need to write code, et cetera. And I think we haven't seen a revolution that has led to anything except the inverse, which has usually led to like now there's like way more creativity, there's like way more, et cetera. And I think like the companies today that are succeeding, it's still roughly the same proportion of companies succeeding and breaking through the ice. And I think a lot of folks will say that Clay's marketing is really, really top notch. That will say the same thing about Nooks. We'll say the same thing about the companies that are breaking through today, roughly at the same percentage and rate as before. So to answer the question more directly, I think that top teams still find a way to stand out, and that usually comes down to the difference in human creativity. And I actually don't think we've seen anything, including AI, that rivals the upper quartile of human creativity just yet. Helps with execution, but doesn't yet rival that.
And you don't feel like we've seen a reduction in the creativity of human beings because of, say, the internet or because of artificial intelligence, at least not to this point?
I don't think so. The even like in the last 3 years, obviously the invention of LLMs being like one of the biggest like breakthroughs in terms of what we're seeing there. But I think that the rate of which creative software is being deployed, the rate at which like knowledge is being spread at this point has only led to like further faster increases across the board.
Yeah, yeah. That's fair. So what would be one thing that you think founders misunderstand about AI, either positive or negative, that are costing them a lot of money? And then I guess the second half of that question would be, what do you recommend?
One thing founders misunderstand about AI that's costing them a lot of money is an interesting question. I had a LinkedIn post like a little bit about this, which kind of broke down like the builds that we have in terms of software. And this is like a little bit of a hotter take, if you will, because I like I said earlier, I genuinely don't believe in the concept of AI replacing humans, but I do think it can delay needing to hire additional folks. And there's actually two costs for hiring folks early at a startup. One is the very obvious one of like you have to pay people, you have to pay the best people the best salaries as well. It's very deserving. There's no doubt about that. But the second one is actually a lot of inertia builds within a business, not just like the inertia that you know, which is like managers and managers and like getting stuff done, but inertia in like company movement and momentum. It's a lot harder to like kill a product that's maybe not working if 10 engineers like poured their heart and souls in it for a long period of time and three product managers, two people tried to sell it, et cetera, than it is if it's one engineer, one product manager, and one seller. And so I think that for a long time, people looked at software in terms of just like, hey, like roughly $2,000-3,000 a month and hire is expensive, and other than this is lower, et cetera. But we actually are like very bullish on like, hey, we'll pay for like very expensive software. We'll pay a lot of money for really expensive software if it can help not only delay further human like labor expenses, but really delay like a lot of expenses across the board in terms of inertia for the business as well. So then once we onboard people, they'll stay for longer, they'll be happier, they'll be better compensated, et cetera. And so I think that's something that like a lot of early stage founders are missing. But I think that ideology is evolving very quickly, and we're seeing like the birth of a lot of great companies because of it.
Yeah, I think we've been bouncing around a little bit in this episode, but I just been kind of, as you're talking, things are coming to my mind. And one of the questions I had is, you know, you guys do so much across so many different marketing channels, and you know, despite the fact that you got involved in like 2019 or 20, you've had an incredible amount of experience in that time. What do you guys think about organic? It's been such a huge part of so many businesses' growth over the last decade. A lot of businesses stood up. I started my first company and drove it to $5-6 million a year in sales on the backs of a YouTube channel, right? That's how, and that was back in 2009, right? And so so many people, and now we're seeing the expansion of AI and all the changes that are happening there, the rate of content that's going to be created. I don't think anybody denies that it's coming. Do you think that organic is going to stop being a vehicle for driving new leads and sales or driving awareness, and everybody's going to have to go to some sort of paid traffic, or do you see it differently?
Yeah, that's a tougher one for sure for me to answer. I've had some thoughts of very high conviction through this chat. This one's going to be a little bit less convicted. I'm not super sure on where this one's heading. Interestingly enough, like my LinkedIn is one of the number one sources of growth for conversion. Not a single word of anything I've ever posted is GPT created. So an LLM hasn't touched anything that we've ever posted on our LinkedIns. Is that the reason that it's working? I don't know. Like I would like to think so. I would like to think as a result of it being like very human, it genuinely is my actual thoughts. It genuinely is like how we behave as a team. I think we are seeing a lot of organic content start to shift towards video, which is a step or two ahead of AI realism. But as you know, it's getting there too, in terms of like video is coming as well. So I'm not super sure. Where I've stood the whole chat is human creativity will for forever be able to outperform AI creativity. And so I'd like to think that at the very minimum, like the most creative marketers will still use these organic channels, maybe some AI assist in terms of the creation of the content. But still the highest quality content by the best people is going to win out. I would like to think that remains true on organic channels. And that's at least the philosophy today.
Well, man, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you coming on. How does everybody find you? I'm sure there's going to be some folks who listen to this and say, I want to talk to Neil about what we're doing.
I would love for them to reach out. My name is Neil Tewari. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am very, very active there. I do respond quite often. And you can always email me at neil@conversion.ai as well.
All right. Thanks, Neil. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason.
Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Thanks so much for being here. Don't forget to like and share. And hey, if anything you heard today got you excited about how to use AI to help grow your business and revenue and focus on the important stuff at the beginning and the important stuff at the end and letting AI take care of the stuff in the middle, then I really think that you should check out Motion. It's an incredible project management tool that incorporates not just your workflows and your processes, but also all of your documents. And it has AI built into it to help you with the process to make sure your stuff's getting done. And they're even developing AI agents that can do some of the work for you. Very exciting stuff. The best part is you can get a free trial just by clicking the link down in the description. So go do it right now. You'll love it. I promise. I'll talk to you soon.